there's all this noise, but when somebody is planted in their skin, and I'm not perfect, and it's okay, and I don't have shame around it, I'm gonna bring all parts of myself to tea in the morning. My meditation teacher, she's like, when you have tea in the morning, invite all parts of you. Invite your self-destructive part, invite your broken part. Guess what? Your messiness, that's your message to the world.
How do you believe in yourself? How do you get past all the fear, procrastination, and perfectionism and do the thing that you really want to do? I'm Sarah Kuhn, and I'm on a mission to help you become the best version of yourself, to love yourself today, right now, as you are, to be wholly and unapologetically you, to be you. In this video, we're looking at the best advice that I've heard from one of my favorite authors and podcasters, Cathy Heller. Cathy's podcast, Don't Keep Your Day Job, has over 15 million downloads. Cathy inspires and encourages people to start their own business. In fact, she's the reason that I started my own business and my podcast. Rule number 9 is my personal favorite, and I'd love to hear which one you like the best. If you hear something that really resonates with you, please make sure that you leave it in the comments below. Here are Cathy's 10 rules for success.
Imposter syndrome is that feeling that you're a fraud, that feeling that you're about to do something and are you the right person for the job? Are you good enough? Is someone going to find out that you're not really cut out to do this? It's a feeling that you don't have it all together. It's a feeling that it's not ready or perfect enough. How many of you, give me a thumbs up or a heart, how many of you have felt this before? How many of you have dealt with this before? I personally have dealt with this many times. And one thing that we're going to talk about, which is really going to help us overcome this, is a phenomenon called pluralistic ignorance. And what that is, psychologists have found out that what we do is we know ourselves intimately. We know our insecurities. We know our vulnerabilities. So I'm seeing a lot of thumbs up and hearts. So that means that you guys, you've dealt with this. And I know it's not pleasant. It's a not good feeling. I understand. I've been there. So pluralistic ignorance is something that happens. And the truth is we shouldn't even call imposter syndrome a syndrome because it's universal. And pluralistic ignorance is this phenomenon where since we know ourselves so well, we don't know other people to the same degree. And so we assume that other people are far more competent, that other people do not carry shame, that other people do not have any kind of issues. And therefore, the people that we see succeeding at the thing we want to do, we then discern that there's a huge gulf between where we are and where they are. And that the only reason they are qualified is because they are, in fact, so much more superior. How many of you have ever felt this way before? How many of you ever thought these thoughts that somebody else is just more qualified for the job? Somebody else has it together more than you do. How many of you have ever thought this? I'm just reading through your comments. It's a feeling you're pretending to be something you're not. Feeling like a fraud. Exactly. Imposter syndrome, when you don't think you are qualified to accomplish your offering. Exactly. Yes. Syndrome, fear of being found out for being a fraud. Exactly. So how many of you have ever thought that these other people who are doing this thing, they are inherently different than you are, and therefore they are going to succeed far beyond what you ever could? So this is the issue. This is inherently the issue that we do not see behind the scenes. We don't understand how hard a task is for somebody else. We don't see somebody else's vulnerabilities. We don't understand their insecurities. We don't see their fear. So we assume we are alone in all of the things that we are struggling with. And this is not correct. This is not true. Every single person, it is universal. It's part of the human condition. Every single person on this planet is wrestling with so many things that they are not letting you in on necessarily, but they are there. We all have our inner demons. We all have struggles. We all feel this way. Einstein said he felt like, his quote was, a swindler. He felt like he was a swindler. He felt as though people were giving him accolades and awards that he did not deserve. When Martha Beck was on my podcast, she told me that even though she has 3 Harvard degrees, she was sitting writing her book, her very first book, and she was sitting at a bookstore looking around at the rows and rows of thousands of books. And she said, Cathy, I thought, who am I to write a book? There are already thousands of other books. What could I possibly say that's going to offer anything to the world? Adam Grant was just on our show last week, and he said something so brilliant. He said, you don't have to say something new if you say something true. Think about that for a second. You don't have to say something new if you say something true. So what Martha Beck ultimately realized is that she has a voice and a perspective that is unique to who she is. And that's why she allowed herself to carry forward and write this book, even though she was scared, even though she felt like an imposter, even though she felt nothing she would say would be anything different or any way superior to anybody else. The first thing we need to do is recognize that every single person under the sun is feeling some semblance of fear and shame and doubt. People say to me all the time, well, you're an extrovert, or so they think. They don't know that I'm actually an introvert extrovert. I have moments where I'm really not extroverted at all. I don't like to do stop and chats. If I see people that I know out, I tend to not want to do it. This is for my whole life. This is not since I have any kind of following. I don't pick up the phone. I don't like to talk on the phone. I'm really a loner in so many ways. But anyway, it's not really the point. I'm just digressing. But somebody had said to me, they thought they knew exactly who I was, right? So they're like, you're the kind of person who's always confident. You're the kind of person who's always an extrovert. And therefore, how would what you're teaching, how would what you do ever work for someone like me, who's an introvert, who's got more fears, and I said, listen, everything I've ever done has been scary. Why do we assume that other people don't feel this way? Why do we assume that we are the only ones who are walking around with this crippling sense of self-doubt? The reason why is because we all put on a really good face and we only show people certain parts of who we are. And that is a huge problem. In fact, what would be so awesome is if every person who had a platform, every artist, every screenwriter, any person who has something to say to the world, if they would continue to dissect the human condition so that every time you encountered any other person, you were aware that other people, even people who are succeeding, are just like you. And that actually makes you feel so much more empowered because your vulnerabilities and your issues are not an impediment to you succeeding. Everyone is feeling those things all of the time. I promise you that.
So do you think that social media is good for that or bad for that? Because I think that what social media does is it makes everyone feel less than a lot of times because people are only posting their most beautiful pictures with the filters and their best moments.
Right.
You know, what you do, you give people inspirational messages that are not like, it's okay to be okay. It's okay not to be okay. Or to be not to be okay. And I think there are people who are doing it now. Maybe, what do you think? Like, what's your idea of all this?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I think that it can, look, it's a tool. It's powerful. You know, in 1987, I didn't know what the person next door to me was doing, let alone the person 7 houses away. Now I can find out what everybody's doing in a second. And it's not real because most people are going to post like, I had the perfect lunch, I had the perfect date, I have sex every night, I look great, look at my lips. It's like you're using a filter, you know,
exactly,
so, right?
Yes,
so what happens is then everyone's comparing themselves, and meanwhile you're comparing yourself to something that doesn't even exist. So that's a problem. And then what happens is we compare our behind the scenes messy life to this person's perfect life, and and then we get this like false sense of reality, like, wait, why would I even try? Because this person's doing it and she's brilliant or perfect. I'm not that like that. It's like, no, because you're not seeing the reality of it, right? So that is a big problem. At the same time, what if we use that platform? What if we used our space in that landscape to shine a big light on the imperfections? Now, oh my God, here's the thing. Again, going back to what I was saying before about walking into that moment with Keanu, or me walking into those agencies, or how I showed up in the podcast space, It doesn't take much to stand out if you're willing to drop the shame and tell the truth.
So often we get so busy. We get so darn busy and we get so distracted from like, who do I really want to be? What do I really want to create? What life do I really want to have? And it's just amazing. Like if this is not a good time to do the thing you always want to do, like when is that time? It's just amazing how we forget about ourselves. We put ourselves dead last and we put everything else ahead of ourselves. And I just think what's so special and so unusual about this time is there's this major pattern interrupt, and it's like we're all being forced off the hamster wheel to look at our lives and be like, what really is essential to who I am? What really is me making a fingerprint in the world? And I am so clear that each of you came to this world to play a bigger game and to really share on a bigger level who you really are. And what gets in the way of that is good old-fashioned fear, which looks like perfectionism. And really it's just not giving ourselves the grace.
20 seconds of pure courage goes a really long way. And sometimes that's all it really takes. We have to have that courage to just go ahead and tell the person we love them, or publish our first podcast episode. You know, I started my podcast in my closet in my old house 3.5 years ago. And I thought, oh my God, no one's going to listen to this. In fact, the very first episode, I re-recorded it 8 times because I couldn't stand the way it sounded. And I felt like I missed something the first time I did it. So then I went and did it again. And then I didn't say something else I wanted to say. And my throat was killing me. I re-recorded it 8 times. And I thought, I'm not putting this out there. This is horrible. And who's going to listen to me? Like, I didn't have a following. I didn't have an email. I was just a songwriter for 10 years before I ever started a podcast. I didn't even have an Instagram account. And I decided to move forward and to publish it. And would you believe, now we're at almost 15.
You know, I was just talking to my sister about a decision that we are thinking of making. And I was like, my gut was like not feeling good about this particular decision. And my husband was saying that on paper, it was like super practical. And my sister said something so smart, which is the least practical thing you can do is do something you don't want. And I think that that is such an important lesson that I've learned over and over in my life. When you come from a place of your deepest desire, when you come from enthusiasm, when you come from this is really what's lighting me up, everything flows, the synchronicity, the magic, you start getting ideas, you start to, castles get built in the sky that never you could think in a million years would have appeared, only because you trust in your knowing. All we have is our gut decision. All we have is that wisdom that for some reason we either feel it or we don't. And as crazy as that is the most practical thing to trust, is what your gut tells you is the truth. And I think so often when people say, I don't know, I think they do know. I think when we say, I don't know, it's that we either don't like the answer or we're afraid of the answer. We're afraid to trust the answer when you can't help it. Like, most people spend their entire lives not trusting that gut desire. They're not putting enough stake in that. So they're coming from a place of like, what's the practical choice? What's the logical choice? But we know the number one regret of the dying is people saying, I didn't live life on my terms. I wasn't waking up with enthusiasm every day. How many people do you know who live on your street who are walking in a state of enthusiasm? And as crazy as it sounds, everything magical, everything successful that's come in my life it was like, I just know this is the right thing. You know, like my husband was my next door neighbor and he was not my type. He is like more introverted and quirky and he's just like his own thing. And there was another person I was dating around the same time. And my husband was my friend, and this other guy, it was like an easy thing. Like I could, you know, like on paper, it looked so perfect and whatever. And everybody said, oh, that's the guy. That's the guy. And I was like, I know it makes no sense, but I'm going with my gut. Like, I'm just going to go with my gut. And I think it was the right decision. You know what I'm saying? Because it didn't matter that the other person, he had the fancy car and the money and the whatever. Like, the least practical thing you can do is not choose your gut, right? And then when I was thinking about career stuff and people said to me, Cathy, you're so bright, like you could go to law school, or you could, you could get a degree in therapy. You could be a psychologist. You could sit and talk to people all day long. And I was like, that feels like the wrong path. Like, I just don't know why it feels like the wrong path. And I just had this like enthusiasm around, I want to try songwriting. I want to try podcasting. And oh my God, like, I mean, it's crazy to say it, but now I make about $6 to $8 million a year, just depending on how much I want to do. Like, I turn the faucet on and off. If I don't want to work, I don't have to work on a given day or a week. I work for myself. I'm my own boss. And it was the most impractical thing, right? It wasn't on paper, but yes, it is. Like Gary Vee was just saying this. He said, when you got the juice, when you're juiced up, he goes, I don't care if you're selling avocados or you're going to build a bed and breakfast on a little island. He's like, when you're juiced up, of course you're going to be successful then, because you wake up every day and you love it. You don't want to watch Netflix and chill. You want to work. And that's how I am. I'm so obsessed with what I do.
One thing that I like to tell people to do is to think about getting yourself in a peak state, right? To think your way, charge your batteries, because every single person who's been on my podcast has some kind of ongoing practice where they charge their own batteries, just like you would with your iPhone. You wouldn't just go out, with your phone on 4%. You know it's not going to make it, right? So it's like, why do we expect that at 4:00 in the afternoon we're going to have any energy when we leave all the scary stuff to the end of the day? I'll do it later. Of course you don't start the business at night. Of course you don't. You watch Love is Blind and have a glass of wine instead. Of course you do, because you're smart and you're normal and you're exhausted. What about if you charge your batteries? What about if you do the things that get you psyched? You listen to this podcast, you listen to somebody else on Instagram or YouTube that you love. You go for a walk in the morning, you put on a playlist, you do some insight time or free meditation, and then you say, I'm going to give myself 10 minutes to do something, and it's going to be mediocre, but I'm going to do it, because done is better than perfect. You could get more out of 10 minutes of messy action a day than you could if you had weeks free and you waited to get it right or waited till you were ready, because that time it's not going to come. So when you know that you need to do something, if you hesitate, the fear is going to overwhelm you. You gotta just do it sometimes. You gotta just go. And then one last teaching, what happened? The story goes that they were between a rock and a hard place, right? There's like Pharaoh's armies coming after them, the water's in front of them, and they just head towards the water. And this one guy like walks in. His name was Nakshon, and he walks in and he keeps walking, and everyone's looking at him like, is he gonna drown himself? What's he doing? And as soon as he gets like all the way above the water over his head, boom, the sea splits. Now, whether you believe that happened or it didn't happen, that metaphor is awesome, because what it's saying, that story is teaching you that like you go all in, you do your part, and that's boom, the magic meets you there.
One thing I just wanted to pop on and say is that you're not alone. And I actually think it's a problem that we don't talk more about what's going on in our lives, because I think we then look at other people on Instagram and we go, oh, what's wrong with my marriage? What's wrong with my life? This one looks like they're having perfect days, one after the other. I don't think it's true. I've said before on the show that we look for evidence for whatever we believe is true. And oh my gosh, as a child of divorce, I can just tell you my greatest work is in my marriage and overcoming some of that stuff that I'm programmed to think and to feel. So you're not alone and you're doing amazing. I just wanted you to know that.
Empathy. We live in an empathy deficit. And I think that empathy, I think being able to communicate with humans, you're so good at that. Let's go back to that moment with him. That's what that is. It's like, hey, I'm Jen. What's up? What is that? The breakthrough, the miracle is you knowing that you're worthy to say hello to him. Because who the hell is he? He's another human being, right? Like when you strip back who we are and you go back, right? Before you had hands and feet and a brain, what were you when you were conceived? You're just this life force. You're just this splash of abundant energy. Like I was just listening to Deepak Chopra, who I just talked to yesterday about being on the show. And he was saying, he goes, when you close your eyes and you think of a forest, it's just abundance, right? You close your eyes, you think of like creatures, just like the moss and the dew and the ladybug and the dragonflies. There's so much in there. He goes, then you close your eyes, think about an ocean. It's so abundant. It's just water for miles, deep, sideways, this way, that way. And what's the sea life look like? Oh my God, it's just like gushing with abundance. Because then you close your eyes and think about yourself inside of you. So much abundance, love, compassion, passion, energy, enthusiasm. That's it. That's your value. Cash in on that. Like, that's the stuff.
See,
right?
But how you do
That's
it though.
it.
It's like you said, it's number one, it's having a personal touch, right? Like you figure out a way to connect to someone beyond just a text message or an email that really kind of sits and resonates. What you're great at and what you just said, it's infectious because of how you do it. Like the way you just explained this whole thing to me.
We all have that. I'm saying that's what when there's a crowd of people scramming to get to him, because that's how you were like, we were outside of this concert.
Or
all
your
these
thing.
People. It's always like that, right? There's all this noise, but when somebody is planted in their skin, and I'm not perfect, and it's okay, and I don't have shame around it, I'm going to bring all parts of myself to tea in the morning. My meditation teacher, she's like, when you have tea in the morning, invite all parts of you. Invite your self-destructive part, invite your broken part. Guess what? Your messiness, that's your message to the world. The only way you help someone is because you've been down there and now you can bring them out. We've talked about that.
Yes,
the stuff we've gone through in our lives is a little bit similar. That's actually a gift for me. You know, Tony Robbins I heard him the other day. He was like, there's no straight lines in nature. Nothing. There's nothing like that. Everything has edges and curves and jagged. That's good. That's what helps you actually fit and do your thing. So it's that. That's the miracle. That's the miracle of your life. That's your breakthrough is I'm worthy. And then I can actually show up. So then when I'm in a sea of people and they're all clamoring for this guy and I'm like, Keanu, and I'm here, right? I'm not like proving myself. I'm not masking it up. I don't have it all together. I'm just Jen. Who's that? Right?
Right. No, I get you.
People are dying. You could walk into Warren Buffett's office. He could be having the busiest day in his life. If you take your seat at the table and you have vulnerability and you're present, there's presence, and you are enthusiastic and you have something to say to him, he's going to listen. He's going to go get this guy a job, get him a chair. Let's go.
So I guess my question to you is, how would you tell somebody who's not quite sure how to do it, or like, how do they find it within themselves?
Yeah, it's a really good question. See, the thing is, there's like an ocean. There's an ocean you have to cross, and it's actually an illusion. You know, like it's not even there. But that the ocean is all the crap that you've been told or taught, and it's all an illusion. Like it's you grow up, and there's like the days of wet cement, right? Where like you know, wet cement, you put your finger in it, it stays there, it's an imprint. So when we're kids, oftentimes either someone is telling us something that's not true, but they're indoctrinating. You're not enough. You know, when you grow up, you're gonna have to settle, or your dreams don't come true, or you know, working hard. Yeah, it's about you know, you have to pay your dues. Let it be easy. Like it's actually the universe, God. It's supposed to be easy. But we make it hard because there's so much resistance to the self and to the hunches and to the whispers. You follow the whisper and know it's enough and just go with it. And you're not worried about it failing and falling on its face. That's the thing. It's all a process of exploration. When we had Angela Duckworth on the podcast, she talked about how your thing, whatever your thing is, she goes, you don't discover it. You develop it. Have you ever walked into a preschool and seen a 3-year-old who's not messy? No, they're all messy.
Yeah, they're all messy.
You and I don't know. How many things have I done that just fell on their face? I don't even remember. I'm on to the next thing. I'm like, let's keep going. Who cares? It's part of the discovery process. So that's about letting go of the shame. So that's what it is. There's so much we fill ourselves with. There's just so much shame. I don't have it together. I'm not ready. I'm not good enough. People are taking antidepressants left and right. It's like there's just so much of that in there. So that's what we have to acknowledge and say, first of all, could I maybe dip my pinky toe into meditating a little so that I can notice this swirling storm? That's not myself. That's like you're not your thoughts. Thoughts aren't facts. We all have, 70,000 thoughts a day? I just heard Eckhart Tolle say something like 98% of your thoughts, you've had them every day, and they're garbage. They're like useless. So what we have to do is we have to find a little way to get into here, which then distances you from the thoughts, and you see them pass through the mind like clouds. Storm clouds, they pass. Sometimes you have a yucky feeling, sit with it. Okay, let it in. Acknowledge it, and then it will pass. It'll do its thing, right? So this is where we get stuck. It's like we constantly are resisting all this stuff that's going on. So I think that the first thing that has to happen is bring the darkness into the light. Acknowledge it. Instead of saying like, I'm great, I'm good, I'm gonna go on Facebook, I'm gonna go on Instagram, I'm perfect. Stop proving. So how about the vulnerability of like, I don't have it all together. Dear world, I'm anxious sometimes. Boom. Now you're at number one.
Well, absolutely.
Everyone's in on that. Do you know what I mean? Let it be easy. There's no, even that big illusion, that mess of illusions that you're going to spend the rest of your life trying to sort through and tease out, and you will get better at like stopping believing in those things, and you'll start to feel your power, and you'll arrive home to yourself. Great. You'll do that. But in the meantime, even all those like self-doubting thoughts, bring them into the light.
Right.
And then they don't have any power because everyone goes, me too, same.
Yeah.
So it's all just being made so much harder than it has to be.
When I did your podcast, remember, you're like, you threw even that. And that was like, by the way, that was only like, let's say 6-7 months ago. So you were already at like the tippy top of that. You literally threw me a microphone. You're like, hey, sit down over here and let's just do it. Like it was super like just who you are. You're like barefoot in your house. And I was like, okay. And I sit down and I'm like, all right, here we go, you know? But like, that's you. You're being you.
Because it's the conversation.
It's the conversation.
I feel like people spend so much time and energy
on
the bells
so
and
true.
whistles. It's like, just get to what's actually
it's
important. You can get your laptop, plug in a microphone, sit in your closet, and you can make something amazing. Just if you can just let go of the shame, and just talk and just tell the truth and just know that people are going to support you in this world.
Or hope to, you know. But I mean,
oh my God, people work so hard to earn love and to earn respect. It's like you could actually just, be yourself. And it's amazing how other people will be like, thank God, I'm like that. Thanks for being someone who has the bravery. It's like such bravery to say that you're anxious. Like we're all freaking anxious. How are we not talking about that every day? How is every conversation not a little bit talking about that?
Well, especially someone, I mean, like you, like me, we have like a family, we've got kids, we have so many things we have to balance. It's really hard not to be anxious when
you live in a time where there's like this pressure, especially for women, where now, after women's lib in the place that we're in, it's sort of like, of course you're going to be able to make 7 figures and be a great mom and eat organic and be mindful. You can do it all. It's like, how about you can do it all and then you can have a nervous breakdown? Of course you can do it all. Of course you can do it, but could you happily, respectfully, healthy in a way that you can actually be happy? No. So let's talk about how difficult it is to balance all that. And for women who are breadwinners and all, there's so much on our plate, right? At the same time, you're still a human being, just like you want your husband to tell you look pretty every day. Like there's just a lot going on.
Right, exactly.
Thank you so much for watching. I'd love to know which clips inspired you the most and how you're going to apply them in your life. Make sure that you leave them in the comments below. If you want more information and inspiration, make sure that you click on the link below to sign up for my newsletter. Thank you again for watching. I really hope this video inspires you to be the best version of yourself, to love yourself right now as you are, to be wholly and unapologetically you, to be you. I'll see you soon.